Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
There is no position in football more volatile than cornerback or the secondary in general. You can go from being really good to really bad in the secondary in the span of a year. And just like you can go from really good to really bad, you can go from really bad to really good again. We have seen this trend over the course of the career of Jalen Ramsey. Look no further than the Browns. They have Denzel Ward on the roster. Greg Newsome has been a victim of this at times. Martin Emerson was a victim of it last year, right? For whatever reason, corner play is some of the most volatile play in all of football. It's really hard to put a finger on why. And even the best corners of our generation have struggled with consistency. Darrelle Revis has struggled with consistency throughout his career, despite being the best corner I've ever seen in my life. Richard Sherman struggled with consistency at times throughout his career as well. It's one of the hardest things to find, consistency at the corner position. It's why somebody like Deion Sanders is kind of considered the GOAT, because until he played when he was like 41 with the Baltimore Ravens, he was consistently great. And that's just hard to do at the corner position. So it's fair to always be nervous about your cornerback room, no matter who you have there, because the NFL is littered with guys who were amazing just a couple of years ago who aren't really looked at that high of a regard anymore now. I mean, Darius Slay. Did you know he was on the Pittsburgh Steelers? He was a shutdown corner a couple years ago. Now he's like another dude on the Steelers, and apparently not even good enough for the Steelers to not want to trade for Jalen Ramsey. Like, you see what I mean? Shit changes fast at corner. And with the Browns, they're experiencing that. In 2023, best secondary in football. Last year, I think the legitimate weak point of this defense was its secondary. Horrific play from Martin Emerson last year. Inconsistent play from Greg Newsome. And yes, Denzel Ward I thought was excellent last year, but he was only one guy trying to make up for down seasons from one corner, another corner, and probably a safety or two. So when we look at this secondary room, we have to understand the volatility of this position and how we can't really judge too much off of what we have seen from a year ago, whether it be positive or negative. And that kind of goes with the conversations that we have to continue to have about some of these corners. Now, we talked about Denzel Ward a little bit in the intro of this video, but let's just kind of finish off the conversation. Denzel Ward is a tremendous corner. He's as consistent of a corner as they come when it comes to his, on the field product. The issue with Denzel has been health, right? Which is another thing that pops up with corners. Corners get injured a lot because corners are usually the smallest guy on the field that play defense. They got to make these big ass tackles. Tackles on these big ass running backs and tight ends and wide receivers, and it's a recipe to get injured, right? So that's another thing that factors into why the corner position tends to be so volatile, on top of the tiny margin that these corners are playing with as rules continue to be stacked up against them. But Denzel Ward, in this hostile climate for corners, has been a pretty solid option for the Cleveland Browns, a great option for the Cleveland Browns. Universally recognized as one of the best corners in all of football. Denzel last season is coming off a #1 season in pass breakups, had the most pass breakups in all of football, and had 2 interceptions last year, and then 13 stops in the run game, 45 solo tackles, and was generally really, really good for most of the year. Now, there were times where Denzel gave up more than you would want to, and if you look at some of his cumulative stats, he didn't really get picked on, but he was able to get thrown on because of the lack of coverage going on the other side of the ball as well. It's simple with Denzel Ward. He's 28 years old, so you still expect him, even at a position that does age relatively fast, you still expect him to be pretty solid for the next couple of years. Um, it's simple with Denzel. If he stays healthy, he will be fine at the end of the day, right? Like that is the big thing with Denzel has been health. I think the health questions with Denzel have been less and less as his career went on. He started his career where he only played 13 games, 12 games his second year, and in 2020, 12 games again. But since then, he's played in 13 or more games in every season that he's been in the Cleveland Browns, dating all the way back from 2021. Last year, he played 16 games for the Browns. So if he can continue that streak of health that he's had, and stay away from the big concern with him is the concussions, because he's had so many of them, right? If he could stay away from those concussions, stay healthy like he has over the last few years, he's going to be a Pro Bowler, maybe even an all-pro caliber player, and he's going to be very, very impactful to this team's bottom line. Denzel Ward, one of the best corners in football. The Browns are in a great place to have him. Corner play is very volatile, but he's been pretty consistent basically since 2021, right? I think 2020 was that the Andrew Sadejo year? And the Andrew Sadejo year and the first John Johnson year. That was a bit of a struggle for Denzel for whatever reason. But he's recovered nicely since then. If he plays the way that we expect Denzel to play and he stays as healthy as he has, then you got really nothing to worry about at your number one corner position, right? As much as we yell and scream about Denzel's injuries, it really hasn't popped up as much as people kind of have it in their mind that it pops up with Denzel. Again, he played 16 games last year in a season where I wouldn't blame anybody for not playing 16 games. Given the Browns were just god awful. But nonetheless, he did. All right, Martin Emerson's the big question here, right? Because Martin Emerson was bad last year. Like, he was horrific last year. Greg Newsome, if you look at football focus grades, he wasn't much better. I'm just going to put this out there on the table. There are some positions where I do value pro football focus grades. I think their offensive line grades tend to be pretty solid. Defensive line grades, it's more about the advanced metrics for me that you get from Pro Football Focus, but they're not terrible. Those are positions that are a lot easier to quantify and grade, in my opinion. When we start getting to stuff like corner and safety, where we don't know what the responsibility is, we're trying to guess it. And yeah, they got people that they call in the different quality control coaches to be able to get more of an answer. But even that has been proven to be iffy with Pro Football Focus. So I don't ever really take their grades seriously for secondary members, specifically because it has proven to be an unreliable metric throughout Pro Football Focus. There are holes in that system for that position. So I take corner grades with a grain of salt, right? Like, we all watched Denzel Ward last year. We think Denzel Ward is a top tier cornerback. NFL players think Denzel Ward's a top tier cornerback. You go on Pro Football Focus, they think he's the 41st cornerback in the NFL. That's crazy to me, right? So don't tend to rock with Pro Football Focus's grades. Like, another example of this in a different direction, they got Ronnie Hickman as the 13th best safety in football. Did y'all think that last year he was the 13th best safety? I don't really rock with Pro Football Focus's secondary grades for a number of reasons. Many people have done videos on why Pro Football Focus's secondary grades are unreliable. If you want to go check out one of those videos, feel free to. I think Brett Coleman did one back in the day. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong there. But Martin Emerson, I thought, was legitimately awful. He was a problem. He would get deep into this cushion. They would throw at the cushion all the time. I just didn't know it was going up. It was like free 10 yards for Martin Emerson every time. This guy who was usually very aggressive, usually very physical, for whatever reason, just wasn't last year. Maybe he was dealing with the injury. Maybe something was going on in his personal life that did not allow him to have the same kind of laser focus on his craft as he usually would. I have no clue what was going on with Martin Emerson last year. But again, it's a volatile position. Small things can make big differences at the corner position. Maybe he had a tiny little injury, and that really affected things for him. He's had 2 really good seasons, in my opinion, 1 really bad one. I think Martin is going to bounce back and be a pretty solid corner. Greg Newsome, on the other hand, I have legitimate concerns at this point with Greg Newsome's ability to fulfill that slot corner role at a high level. Can he fulfill it at a satisfactory level? Sure. I don't think he's terrible at it. But if there's a real threat in the slot, I get nervous about Greg Newsome being in the position to cover that person, especially if he's going to be left on an island with that guy in the slot. Here are a couple of the reasons. Greg's lateral quickness is just not there to be able to run sideline to sideline with elite slots. He's not effective. You can run away from Greg Newsome on a in-breaking route pretty easily. And you can see it when you watch the Browns defense out there. There's always one play where Greg Newsome gives up a big in-breaking play to a wide receiver he runs away from. He just does not have the hips to be able to open up and accelerate and go left and right. I don't know why. He's a pretty good athlete. He runs 4.3, but when it's sideline to sideline, he don't look like he runs 4.3. North-south, he's pretty good. That's what makes Greg Newsome livable at the slot, is because he's so good vertically, right? And he's a willing enough run defender. He's not like great, but he's a willing enough run defender to where he's not going to be an embarrassment at the spot. So that's what makes him livable. I'm not really happy with what I've seen with his ability to be exploited. Maybe bringing in somebody like Carson Schlesinger as a linebacker, somebody who can kind of open his hips up, slide up and down the field a little bit more, can take away some of that in-breaking stuff away off the plate of Greg Newsome, will make him much better. But until that question really gets solved satisfactory, I don't think Greg's going to be anything but a serviceable slot corner, which is certainly like not what we wanted with Greg Newsome coming out of the first round. I think truly he's a boundary corner that's kind of stuck playing the slot, because as bad as he is left to right, Martin Emerson's not any better, if not worse, at going left to right. So it's just a tough spot for Greg, right? He kind of drew the short stick. He's the guy who has to be the slot. I think they should experiment more with letting Denzel follow his guy into the slot if there's like Jamar Chase or somebody like that, right? And just trusting Denzel on that island and letting Greg move out. They got to do something to mitigate Greg Newsome's inability to really guard a plus level slot, right? Like if Jerry Jeudy weren't on the Browns, or if the Browns were playing the Browns and we were game planning, I'd be like, get that ball to Jerry Jeudy all game, right? Because Jerry gonna be able to run away from Greg all day. Like all he needs to do, cut horizontal, boom, he's running away from Greg every time. And that is the level of player that I think gives Greg Newsome a problem, right? If you can't just put anybody in the slot and tell him run away from Greg, that ain't going to happen, right? But you get a guy who's a Pro Bowler like a Jerry Jeudy or anybody better than that in there, they're going to be able to run away from him, right? Now, to be fair, the only guy in the division that really creates that problem for you, luckily for the Browns, is Jamar Chase. We can make the argument for T. Higgins, but Jamar Chase is going to be in the slot most of the time when he played the Browns. So, yeah, it's really just Jamar Chase, but my God, like, again, it's Jamar Chase. That's why I want Denzel to follow him, and I think Denzel does do a decent job of following him whenever the Browns and the Bengals play. But, yeah, that's the one saving grace here is that, DK, he not getting in there. Same thing goes with, like, let's say Flowers, they really play him as an X, though, so they don't really put him in the slot as much. There's just issues you get with Greg in the slot. He's not a top tier guy. And I think that was the hope, was that Greg could be Jalen Ramsey light for the Cleveland Browns. And he's not Jalen Ramsey light. He's a decent slot corner, which is not great there. And that causes some problems there. So that's the Browns corners. Cam Mitchell is in this room. We got to see it from Cam. There's a lot of people who are very excited about Cam. Cam's a really good special teams player. I've highlighted that on multiple film breakdowns. So like, he's a pretty good special teams player. We got to see it consistently in coverage with Cam when he's in there in relief of Greg Newsome. But having both those guys, I think, is fine. And I like the four corners that the Browns are really going to rely on in this season. Like maybe they want to do more with like Tony Brown or something like that. I don't know. But for me, I'm looking at those four names as the primary guys that are going to be rotating in and out. The safety position is a bit more interesting. When I say interesting, there's a lot more questions here at safety. Ronnie Hickman is scheduled to be the free safety. Again, Pro Football Focus said it was the 13th best safety in all of football. I'm going to hit the doubt button on that. But what Ronnie should, in an ideal world, be asked to do is just be a post safety, sit back, react, babysit, right? I don't need him to come down like Ed Reed and pick off people underneath. We got enough playmakers in that front seven. We got Denzel Ward. We don't need the free safety to be a playmaker. We need the free safety to be a safety valve more than anything, especially with how aggressive this defense is going to be up front. That's what Ronnie has to prove he has the patience and the eyes for, is to be that safety valve. He definitely has the athletic ability. He's a super great athlete, really fast, quick guy. We've seen that from Ronnie. It's just, do you have the eyes and the discipline to be able to be that safety valve, right? And I think we did not see that enough last year to be very confident in it this year. They brought in Rayshawn Jenkins and DeMonte Casey. We'll see what the Browns do with these guys as preseason goes along. I really don't have much else to say about them. They drafted Miles Harden, played him at safety last year. It wasn't really a successful experiment. Tony Brown's another one that I think they're going to have him play safety. The safety room, it's not very impressive. I mean, Grant Delpit is in that room as well, which I think is the headliner, but Grant really plays more in the box than he does as a true free safety, right? So he's kind of more in that linebacker room conversation than anything. But still, maybe the plan is to give him more responsibility, take him away from the box, make him be a free safety. I don't know. Like, I know Grant's skill set in college was that, but when we tried that out with him in the NFL, it wasn't very successful. He was pretty inconsistent. And he's already not the most consistent player to begin with. So we'll see, right? I don't think they're asking much from these safeties, which is the good news. So it's not the most impressive room. You don't have the most confidence in it, right? I don't feel the same way I feel about the defensive line, about the safeties. But you have enough in front of them that hopefully it doesn't really come down to that, right? That's what Miles is getting the money for. That's why you spend the draft picks on Mike Hall and Mason Graham and Isaiah McGuire, and why you spend a draft pick on Carson Schlesinger and you pay Denzel Ward so you don't have to sweat out the free safety, right? Like, that's what all of that should be for. We'll see if that bet pays off. But all in all, this secondary, there's a lot of things I can see going wrong. It's a volatile position. The Browns have some particularly volatile players in some key spots. The one reliable guy is there is Denzel Ward, and his health situation has been better over the last couple of years. You just have that looming threat of concussions, and we're coming off of JOK already being deemed out for the season after what happened to him last year. So we're going to be nervous about that. Look, the talent in this room, in this group, is, B+ to A level talent. My faith that that's all going to play out how we want it to is a little bit less than how I feel about the talent itself. So I give the talent a B plus, but if I have to give the room a grade, I think this is probably going to be a B minus room. I think this is going to be the thing we're worried about week to week, right? Is the secondary going to show up in a big game in order for the Browns to win it? What kind of performance are we going to get from Martin Emerson? What kind of performance are we going to get from Greg Newsome? Is this going to be the game that Denzel Ward misses this year, right? Like, we're going to have consistent questions. I mean, the safety room is full of questions. So, yes, you have Denzel. Martin's been pretty good most of his career. Greg Newsome is very talented to be playing the slot. But in practice, I think this room is more likely to underachieve than overachieve in my view of it. We'll see what they do. Hopefully I'm wrong here, but I'm going to give the room a B minus. Y'all let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.